Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Ari and Big Mike are proud to present the greatest podcast in the world. No snowflakes allowed, and summer is coming.
This is the podcast that was started by two guys on cigar night. So, Mike, tell us, what do you got for us today?
Well, so there was an interesting article I read in the New York Times saying more than 500 U.S. officials signed a letter protesting Biden's Israel policy. The signers, representing some 40 government agencies, reflect growing internal dissent over the administration's support of Israel's military campaign in Gaza. So I'm just reading the headline there for you. And as I go through the article, what do you see? You see, like, there's a lot of dissent. There's a lot of people who are pissed off and they want to be like, no, Biden, get us out of this situation. Because we see it as a world war coming. We see it as this coming. But Biden's been very strong in holding on. But now, over this past weekend, I read a different article that's talking about the polls, right? Talking about presidential polls right now, who's going to win in 2024. And they put Biden up against Nikki Haley, and they put Biden up against DeSantis, and they put Biden up against Trump. And in all three instances, he lost. He lost the presidency, not just by a hair's breadth, but like by a mile. They say that only 14% of Jews actually are happy with what he's been doing for Israel. I don't know how I feel yet. I don't know if I'm in the 14 or the 86. I really don't. I'm kind of on the fence with him because he has been very publicly supportive, but he's also said a lot of stuff that I'm like, I'm not really sure. And with the war basically expanding, now we're fighting in Gaza, we're fighting in Lebanon. The Golan is a big hot button, and it's all proxies for Iran. The same Iran that just got $6 billion from the U.S. government is what's funded a lot of this. So there's a back and forth to all this that we're not really sure of, like exactly where's America going to stand, so on and so forth. And it's a big clusterfuck. There's no other way to say it, because what's going on in Israel. There's backing from Turkey. There's backing from Iran. Even Russia has a hand in this. And now they're saying that China wants to get involved somehow. I mean, I'm not really sure how, but they're kind of sitting in a really good spot right now with this whole war going on. China is looking to make bank because they're going to be the only ones who haven't been in fighting, haven't been this, who have powers that can make missiles, make guns, make bullets, so on and so forth. And it's blowing my mind how this whole good versus evil is being taken so politically now that now we have, I want to say it right. We now have a battle set up where anti-Semites are on one side of the bridge. And on the other side are, your Jews. And we're being beaten down and we're being put into places that we don't necessarily want to be. The only bright side to all this, that as the world's beating us down, is we've never been more unified. As a people, we are more unified today than I've ever seen us. So that's a good thing. It's just, there's a lot of things that go along with this. That his own government is starting a small, I wouldn't say coup, but a little bit of a kind of like a Boston Tea Party kind of thing, where it's listen, we want to be heard, we want representation, I want you to understand that not everybody's with you being so pro-Israel. So I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on that.
First thing that comes to mind is I can't help but think about the headline of it saying 40 government officials.
No, over 40 government agencies.
40 government agencies, fine. Either way. The first thing that comes to my mind when I think that is another headline that said something like 50 intelligence officials say that the Hunter Biden laptop story bears the signs of Russian disinformation. And as it turns out, the Hunter Biden laptop story was absolutely true. So when I hear all these unnamed government officials telling me what I should believe, the first thing I say is, are you calling me an idiot? Is that what you're trying to tell me? That you think I'm a moron?
You know, there's an old phrase that I'd like to remind people. How do you know a politician's lying?
His lips are moving.
There you go. You know,
But the same thing goes for the media. And look, the New York Times has been fake news since the 1930s. And during the Holodomor, War, when Joseph Stalin and his communists starved out the Ukrainian people, one of the first times that the Russians have absolutely oppressed the Ukrainians. Walter Duranty, who was a communist and won the Pulitzer Prize, said that there's hunger but no starvation in the Ukraine. He ran cover for one of the most evil regimes that ever ruled a country in the history of the world. And so the New York Times doesn't get a lot of belief from me or trust from me. In fact, if you want to talk to people about what they read in the news, if you're going to give me an article and ask me my thoughts on it, my first thought is this: okay, and I'm sure the answer to very few for you is, how many of these do you still believe are true? Right? The Russian collusion hoax, the Steele dossier hooker story, the Russian paying bounties on U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan, Trump calling neo-Nazis fine people after Charlottesville, Trump suggesting drinking or injecting bleach to fight COVID, Trump dumping a whole basket of food to a koi pond in Japan, Trump cleared protesters with tear gas to use the Bible as a photo op in front of the church. Hunter Biden, the laptop, was Russian disinformation. Elections were fair because no court found... One second. There's a bunch... Scott Adams lists these as frauds. Now, my question to you is, and always will be, not necessarily you, but why would the media tell the truth now? I mean, they not only did they lie, but they lied shamelessly about these things. For example, the fine people hoax. All you had to do to know that the media was lying to you was look at an unedited version of what Mr. Trump said after Charlottesville, and you would know that the way the media told that story was an absolute lie. But they lied to you anyway, even though you could easily have gotten the truth. So when you don't have access to the truth, do you think they're telling the truth? Do you think they can be trusted? Do you think that the people who believe that are anything other than suckers?
No, I don't. I mean, listen, I mean, I've heard this phrase thousands of times. The media is nothing more than propaganda, and I agree with that. They're trying to get me to think and feel and believe certain things. I remember in 2020 when COVID first happened, you know, everybody on Facebook, they're putting out all these articles saying how, like, you know, the government's going about it wrong. We shouldn't take the shots, whatever they were called, the vaccines that they called it a vaccine, but it wasn't really a vaccine. But that's neither here nor there. Like, so many of those articles talked about a different way of dealing with it than what the government was. I mean, I'm going to be personally, I love history, and anytime the government's ever given away anything so-called for free, it always costs. It costs in many different ways. Like, for instance, they want to inoculate the blacks in the South. And what happened? A whole bunch.
The Tuskegee syphilis experiment?
Yeah, exactly. So they did it under the idea of, like we're going to vaccinate you. Nope. We're going to drug you, and we're going to get you sick, and we're going to make you go crazy, and whatever. Like, really, it's
just worse than that, because the doctrine of sovereign immunity says that the victims of that government experiment couldn't sue the government because the government could do no wrong. Sovereign immunity. The king can do no wrong, nor can the king's servants in the service of the king. And that's what the English doctrine of sovereign immunity was back in England. But here in the United States, the courts have expanded the doctrine of sovereign immunity to absolutely nutty proportions, so that the people who killed all those people at Ruby Ridge or Waco or Tuskegee, or from frickin' doing open air nuclear weapons tests. None of those people could be sued because it was the government doing the government's job. So it's even worse than you think. I mean, people talk about, people have said government is what we all do together. Sure it is.
I mean, government's supposed to be a place like that.
It's supposed to be, sure.
But it's not. It's about power. It's about money. It's about control. It's not really like when you look at the Constitution, if you ever read the minutes of the Constitutional Convention, thank you, excuse me. So I wanted to get that right. But one of the things that you saw, that there were over 1,000 things they wanted to put in there. And they argued each one of them out in a timely manner to the point that after a few months, we had this amazing document. Could you see the government of the United States today doing anything like that? I remember when Biden first got elected president, right? I'm going to let that go. I'm going to let that go. We're not going to talk like that. No. But when he first became president,
Sorry.
There were a lot of executive orders undoing bipartisan movements under Trump. Like for years, people tried to get EpiPens to be a reasonable price because they're $600 a piece, right? This is saving people's lives. Oh, so under Trump, both Democrats and Republicans, who had both been fighting for this under Obama, finally get it done.
One second. Just I've had the EpiPen. Actually, the last time I had it was before they made it into a pen. But I've had Epis, about a dozen times in my life.
Hold on. Let me finish my thought here.
Okay, finish your thought.
So, he immediately undid bipartisan efforts, right? Why? And it was just across the board. Anything that Trump did, we're immediately going to get rid of, even though a whole bunch of that was bipartisan. Like, for decades, we've been hearing we're going to move the embassy to Jerusalem. No president did it. Every president said that they were going to do it, right? But guess what? Nobody actually did it until Trump. But now what? By the way, where's the embassy now?
It's in Jerusalem.
Are you sure?
Is it in Tel Aviv again?
Yeah. Well, it's like I'm not really sure on that one anymore because I've heard different things, but I never actually checked it out. But the fact of the matter is the fact that there could be an argument on that is a big problem. I look at all this, and I see this. How long can we really get supported by the U.S. government? How long can they really be said, oh, we're going to defend you. We got your back. Don't worry about it. Take you back to the, I believe it was the 6-Day War or the Yom Kippur War. I'm not exactly sure. Where Israel was hurting for missiles and for guns and for weapons, and they begged Nixon. So
Nixon, that was the Yom Kippur War.
It was Yom Kippur. They begged weapons from
Nixon. I think it was Operation Nickelgrass or something like
right,
that. Right,
and Henry Kissinger, who happened to be a Jew himself, was the guy who was delaying the weapons going to Israel because he didn't like the way things were. It was his personal opinion, even though Nixon said yes. Henry Kissinger made it take its sweetest time. He really did. He didn't. Henry Kissinger did not want the Jews to do what they needed to do because he was afraid of the Arab backlash. And that's a problem because we're not doing what's right.
It's a problem, but there was a backlash, and that whole oil crisis that happened. I'm not saying that they made the right decision. I'm not saying the reasoning was correct, but they had that big giant oil crisis because of American aid to Israel.
Right.
That's something legitimate to be afraid of, and how they should have dealt with that is not something I am remotely qualified to discuss. But you have to admit they at that time had that trump card. All I can say is that's why we need petroleum independence. We need to have our own source of petroleum, our own way of refining that petroleum to make sure that we are insulated from those kinds of events in future.
You know, I'm not I'm not the guy who can say to you, this is the way to be or that's the way to be. You know, America and Canada developed a pipeline to bring oil. They 11,000 jobs.
Yeah, and former Vice President Biden put a kibosh as soon as he was recognized as president.
Yeah, there's a reason. There's reasons for this, things that we don't necessarily know. I just want to point out, if you look at what the Clintons were worth prior to becoming president versus what they are now, and where their money comes from, they're worth over $100 million. Most of their money came from out of the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia, the same country where, like, you know, is now supposedly backing Israel, supposedly America's friend. Oh, and you know, they did this pesky thing where they flew a few planes into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. But we're going to let that go because of, you know, money or whatever bullshit reason we're going to come up with. But the fact of the matter is that 7 years after Muslims tore down the World Trade Center 2 blocks over, they built a mosque. And America's lost its way, it seems, because we went from being a country that fought a war, World War II, based on like more morality, right versus wrong, to, yeah, what are you going to give me? What are you going to get from me? How much? Where's the money?
Well, what's the worst part about it is the recent TikTok trend is young people quoting with approval Osama bin Laden's letter to America that he wrote in 2000, or that he delivered in 2002. Our young people have been taught very carefully to hate America so much that a man who killed in one day nearly 3,000 Americans is being honored by many of our young people.
That's disgusting.
It absolutely is. The thing is, we are being fed a diet of bread and circuses by people who control the messages. And
right, but hold on. I mean, I just want to point out that Osama bin Laden was propped up by the United States government in the 80s to fight war against Russia that they couldn't fight. So they sent people to train him, they sent them weapons, they sent all this sorts of stuff. And then we walked away. Now, let me see if I got this right. You gave him all these weapons, all this training, and then you walk away. And then when 2001 happens, everyone's like shocked. Oh my God. The current administration, whatever it is, and I'm not just talking Biden, I'm talking every president. Very few of them have had long-term views on this. This isn't the first time a group that we've trained, a group that we taught, because we needed them to fight a proxy war for us, then came back and screwed us in the end. It's just, that's the way we roll, because it's not my administration that has to deal with it.
Well,
it's the next administration.
We had an evil empire to fight, and the correct strategy for bringing down the Soviet Union, which was one of the most important moral crusades of the 20th century, getting rid of that evil empire, was so important. I mean, this is an empire that killed people in the tens of millions. They killed more people than National Socialist Germany. And after the Soviet Union fell,
I mean, that was just Stalin himself. Stalin is responsible for more people dead than Hitler, right? Now, that being said, we call them the evil empire. But what about China? You know, there was a guy who took over the place, Mao Zedong, killed more people than anybody else in the 20th century,
including Stalin.
He didn't give a fuck. He literally just, when I look at like what he did, I mean, he just took all the opium addicts, lined them up, and shot them down. That was it. There was no, but nobody really talks about that. To get back to the point that what we were saying, I really firmly believe that this descent that I just read about, I don't know how real it is or how not real it is, but what I do know is that there's going to be a limit to how long we have the support of America. There's going to be a limit to how long the world's going to support Israel. We already see how the world's been gaslighting us. We already see how the world's been doing a lot of things to us that we don't like. I lived in Israel for 16 years. I lived in America the rest of my life, the other 30 years of my life. I know how both countries go. And you want to know something? I'm floored and I'm embarrassed. You know, for the way America is acting in certain ways. I get it. In other ways, I'm proud. And I'm really at a loss for figuring out how to. Unfortunately, we live in a world of gray. You know, and it's not black and white.
Well, guess we're just going to have to muddle through. So you want to take us there, Mike?
That's it out of me. I want to thank you all for listening. I appreciate you all hanging around. Y'all have a good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and y'all have a great day.
And just remember that my book, and it's a good time to remember that my book, Just Power, which here is the author's review copy. It will be coming out probably in the weeks to come. In the meantime, Consent and Due Process, the first 2 books of the Kingmaker series, are available now. Consent is available as an audiobook for free on YouTube. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel, but most importantly, tell your friends. Have a great day.